Last week on Legally Kidnapped.
Good evening. Our top story this week. Congress introduces a constitutional amendment for parental rights that would enshrine the liberty of parents to direct the upbringing and education of their children. In Pennsylvania, jury selection begins and ends in the Penn State sex abuse scandal starring former football defensive coordinator Jerry Sandusky, who stands accused of sexually abusing several boys in his care. Due to the Penn State case, the executive director of Pennsylvania Family Support Alliance said that mandated reporters need to be trained so they know what to look for and what to do when they see it. In Georgia, the Penn State case has sparked a new law requiring volunteers to report child abuse. And Penn State allegations spark a knee-jerk reaction in Louisiana as well after the governor signs a bill to add criminal penalties to those who fail to report sexual abuse. A new study from the University of New Hampshire finds that children living in rural areas are more likely to be substantiated for child abuse than kids living in urban homes. The Colorado Supreme Court hears two cases involving foster parents regarding whether or not foster parents can continue a parenting relationship with the kids and whether or not they have a right to present arguments in court. In California, efforts to reform Los Angeles County's child welfare system stalls, and the New York Court of Appeals rules that courts cannot grant visitation to parents after their rights have been terminated. According to a new study by the Center for Disease Control, more teenagers are now smoking marijuana than cigarettes. In Connecticut, a school considers allowing drug-sniffing dogs to check students. The state of Minnesota consults with the Mayo Clinic in an effort to get doctors to stop prescribing dangerous psychiatric drugs to kids on Medicaid and in foster care. And in Indiana, foster parents aren't getting their money on time. In Wisconsin, a mother whose 2-year-old son was killed by her boyfriend last year is forced to relive the pain after Governor Scott Walker used the kid's picture in a political ad to attack the crime record of his opponent. Facebook is looking at ways to allow kids under 13 onto their site. In Washington, a judge temporarily blocks enforcement of a law that would require advertising companies to verify the ages of people in sex-related advertisements. Texas fathers who are stuck paying child support for kids who aren't theirs have until August to file a paternity suit before the laws stiffen. And the Texas child protective industry is attempting to address a shortage of baby stealers in Bell County by offering generous incentives for newly hired CPS agents. In India this week, homes for special needs kids are now going to be run by the Social Justice Department after a spat of sexual abuse scandals in state-run homes for mentally retarded children. The Russian Foreign Ministry has become aware of another Russian orphan who was adopted out to American parents who has been abused and tortured. In Mexico, babies adopted in an international scam involving Irish couples have been returned to their parents. In Ireland, a 16-year-old boy who threatened to slit his social worker's throat is being held without bail pending DPP directions. In Scotland, a judge calls for the speeding up of child welfare cases. And in New Zealand, government support parties have rallied against a move to give courts the power to stop child abusers and killers from procreating or being placed in charge of children. In Canada, the police are searching for a Children's Aid Society imposter who showed up at a home and removed the clothes of a child to inspect for bruises, but when the mother called to inquire, nobody at the Children's Aid Society knew a thing. Police in Waterloo, Ontario apologized to a father who was arrested and strip-searched after his 4-year-old daughter drew a picture at school of him holding a gun shooting monsters. On Prince Edward Island, a 71-year-old foster parent is convicted of sexually abusing girls in his care. And in Alberta, the mayor of Edmonton presents an award for outstanding service to Velvet Martin for her tireless advocacy on behalf of the rights of disabled children and their families 6 years after her daughter Samantha died in a foster home. In Australia, a judge decides that a father can't see his kids in a divorce case even though he did nothing wrong just to satisfy the psychotic ravings of a woman who falsely accused him of child abuse, then sends the kids a letter explaining his decision. Australian hospitals are being accused of failing to recognize signs of child abuse and misdiagnosing too many cases as accidents. An Australian mother launches a high court appeal against a family court's decision to send her kids back to live with their allegedly sexually abusive father. And iPad videos are being used to spy on ex-partners in divorce cases. In England, a mother from Gambia is accusing British authorities of abducting her children. British social workers apparently hid the fact that they knew a teenage mother was at risk from sex grooming gangs 6 years before she was brutally murdered. British grandparents are now being threatened by police for sending birthday cards or presents to their grandkids after the parents have split up. And British social workers are still holding a kid who was born to British parents in France even though there's a high court order to give the baby back and the kid has never even lived in the UK. In entertainment news this week, Mel Gibson's 93-year-old father files for divorce from his wife of 10 years alleging prescription description of abuse. In Kiss Base's Gene Simmons and his old lady ponder adopting a child while throwing their son out of the nest for lazing around and doing nothing. In Ohio, a man gets 25 years in jail for raping an infant during a supervised visit at a county social service building. In Arizona, the boyfriend of a CPS care provider gets 2 years for child abuse. In Illinois, CPS agents substantiate abuse and neglect allegations against a couple of foster parents. And in Mississippi, a man gets 15 to 30 years in jail for sexually abusing his former foster brother's daughter. In South Dakota, the Lakota People's Law Project releases a special report on a case where a non-Indian foster parent who took in Native American girls was convicted of child rape. In North Carolina, a foster parent who stands accused of sexual abuse denies a plea deal. And in Tennessee, the attorney for the Knox County Commissioner who was caught blowing another guy in a park last week is saying that the Department of Children and Families made false statements about the foster kids who are living in his home. In Ohio, a mother sits in jail for refusing to hand over 2 kids to a CPS agent, and police are on the hunt for the 2 kids who are now safely hidden away. In California, a 12-year-old girl goes missing from her Sacramento foster home. A San Francisco man who is charged with whooping his 11-year-old son's ass with a belt is acquitted of child abuse. A Texas mother is arrested after slapping a 12-year-old daughter in the face for smart-mouthing and cursing her. And finally, tonight in Pennsylvania, a woman gets sent to jail for stalking the family who adopted her son who was stolen by CPS agents back in 2003 after she allegedly sent flowers and a card to the boy last year. For these stories and all the latest dirt on the child protective industry, visit www.legallykidnapped.com. And until next week, this is Baby LK, over and out.